So we came into the church building today to set up. Actually, yesterday and today we're setting up, and wanted to talk a little bit about the things that I'm feeling and probably you're feeling to some degree or another as things open up in our country to various degrees, or maybe not, depending on where you're at. We're having services here Sunday, limited services, and we're setting up, and we have a certain capacity that we have, and as we do this, there's a feeling that we all have, and there's a word that gets used. I'm not sure if the word is used correctly, but we use the word surreal a lot, and I'm not sure what the technical definition of this word is, but we use it to describe this jumble of emotions we have when things don't quite seem right. We might be happy about something on one hand, and then there's this apprehension on another hand, or fear or nervousness, whatever. These feelings all get jumbled together, and we call it surreal. Things don't quite feel normal. We're trying to act normal, whatever. And it's this is really bizarre feeling that we end up with, and it's just this because we have a jumble of emotions. We're complex characters and people, and so we call this surreal. I want to talk about this from a different perspective and a much more serious perspective. A friend of mine was in a missionary family. When he was a teenager, his family lived in El Salvador. Now, if you know anything about El Salvador in the 80s, it was had a lot of turmoil. He described to me a lot of unpleasant situations that he found himself in. And like, for example, there would be times where these guerrilla fighters would stop a bus, a school bus, and order everybody off of the school bus. And they just go around terrorizing kids and things like that. And here they have machine guns and things. And he comes from a fairly stable, environment in the United States and finds himself in this situation. And this went on, things like this, the sound of bombs going off in your country, or what have you. It is surreal. It's like, I can't be living in this situation. This can't possibly be real. So when he came back, he was talking about he's going to the high school. Their family came back, and so he's walking out of the high school, and a car backfired. One of the kids had a piece of junk car, and it backfired. And he did what he was programmed to do. He went down, boom, right in front of everybody, because it was just this automatic response. It's a part of his life that's been normal for him for some period of time. Of course, he gets up, he's all embarrassed, and everyone's looking at him. And, what are you going to explain to a bunch of students? Oh, yes, well, I was in a country with guerrilla warfare, and, probably most college or high school students think that means that a bunch of guerrillas were around fighting each other, or whatever. They don't even know what guerrilla warfare is. But, well, he was experiencing something that soldiers experience, something a lot of people in a lot of different situations experience when you're taken from one setting and put into something that's a hostile environment to you, and then returned back to normal. And that is called PTSD. Now, I do not want to make light of PTSD, and some people will think that I'm trivializing this by mentioning this, but PTSD has a lot of different degrees and severities. It depends on there are two different, as far as I understand, there are two basic factors that go into determining PTSD. One is the severity of a negative circumstance that you're thrust into, and the other is the time involved. So a lower intensity type of a harm, over a longer period of time might produce the same type of PTSD as an incredibly aggressive situation over a short period of time, or whatever. Obviously, the worst would be to suffer something for a long period of time, like an abuse, a severe abuse over, years and years and years. You read the stories of people have been locked away, kidnapped and locked in something for years, and they are going to suffer PTSD probably for the rest of their life. You and I are not going to suffer PTSD for the rest of our life, but we are experiencing this, a form of it right now. The other night went out to do something normal. In fact, even as we do something normal, went to a thrift store yesterday, just something to do something, and went to a record store just to buy some new records because I'm getting bored with my old ones. And I thought, Katie said something as we were coming home. She says, "Oh, that felt normal." And I said, "The fact that you noticed that it was normal means that it's not normal yet. Because if it was normal, we don't think, if we went out to a thrift store 3 months ago, we didn't go, well, that was normal." So the fact that we're still in this period where everything is an upheaval, kind of emotionally speaking, and we're trying to readjust emotionally, and it'll, for different ones, it will take different period of time to do that. And for those who are older, it might not in their lifetimes get back to a feeling of normality. And I don't want to trivialize someone who's come back from war, or somebody who's suffered abuse or various things, but we are feeling a similar type of a thing with less intensity. But PTSD comes from when any one of your basic human instincts, and there are a number of them, any one of your basic human instincts feels violated. And you have to try to go about life as normal. And people, well, why don't you just, you're back from war. Why don't you just live life normal? It's normal here. You're not in war. No one's shooting at you. What? Because there's this emotional period of adjustment that they have to go through, and some people never do. And so for 2 or 3 months, you and I have had a number of basic human instincts violated, whether necessary or unnecessary. This is the reality of it. Don't want to, trivialize other people's trauma, but just as an example, people have lost their jobs. That's traumatic to people. Maybe you didn't, so maybe your trauma is different. We have a need for basic human interaction, and that's been denied to us, or from us, whatever. That we don't have. When you go without that for a long period of time, and then all of a sudden you're thrust back into it, it's going to feel weird. And that's a form of PTSD. Having a situation where every day you see a death count does something psychologically to you, and it violates your basic stability in terms of your sense of security, your sense of safety. Always hearing that. And if you do go out to a store, what do you hear? You hear, stay safe, stay at home, wear a mask, do this, social distance. And there's all these statements, even though they're well-meaning, they put into your mind, they are constant reminders of your lack of physical security. So that is going to cause, when you go, can we go out now? Is it safe now? Who's going to tell me? Are they telling me the truth? Do they know all the facts? And there's this instability. My sense of security has been violated, even if for good intentions. And some of you and we all have this basic need to a certain extent or another, but our sense of liberty, and rights and freedoms, and not to insult people, there's 2 sides of this. Some people really are pro-rights, and they're willing to trample everything else for their rights, and some people, I've seen on the other side of things, rights simply don't matter. Your rights simply don't matter. What do you care about your rights? Well, we all have this innate nature that wants to be free, that wants to be liberated. And so, depending on where you're at, that's been trampled on, or you have that feeling that it's been trampled on to different degrees. Now, maybe if you're in a state like North to South Dakota, you don't feel that so much. But maybe if you're in New York State, you feel that more, or California, and then maybe you're kind of in between, or whatever. But we have that, and so some people really are going to be apprehensive as we go out. Are they going to do this again next year or the year after? And so there's this: can I acclimate back to normal or not? And so you and I, even as I set up this building, it looks kind of normal, but now there's a bunch of seats in this section and a bunch of seats in that section, and we're going to be social distancing. It's going to be kind of normal, but it's not going to be like what it was 3 months ago. And there's going to be a period where we readjust, and it's going to take some time. And emotionally, we're going to be suffering from a minor a degree of PTSD. So I want you to be aware of what you are feeling. And I want you to be aware of what other people are feeling. Understand that different people will be feeling this to different degrees. Older people are feeling very vulnerable and not knowing of their security. But if you're an older person, understand that a younger person is feeling violated in a different way. And we all are trying to deal with this, and especially in the church, we have to try to get back to a semblance of normalcy, understanding the needs of each other and taking those into account more than our own needs, which is what Paul said in Philippians. We take into account other people's needs as more important than our own.